Hey everyone, today's video is a first impression video on a board game that is currently on Kickstarter from Kids Table Board Game. And that game, you're wondering, is Power Plants. Video. Why can't I get that? No. I'm gonna redo that. So a few things to go over before we start. If you're new here, I am Krissy, and this is my channel, Two Sheep, One Wheat, where I play and review board games. So if that sounds like something that you're into, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below so that you can catch the next video just like this one. Now to get on to the game. This prototype copy was sent to me to hear my thoughts on it. And with that being said, a lot about this game is going to change. As you can already see from the Kickstarter page, my tiles look completely different from the ones that will be in the finished copy. So with all that said, let's go ahead and go over the game real quick so that you know what I'm talking about when I give you my first impression. So in Power Plants, you're a wizard and you're growing a garden that you're going to be sharing with your rival, and you're going to be planting magical plants. There are a bunch of different plants that you can choose from, so you get to select 5 of them along with the plant cards. Now you can either do this random or you can just choose which 5 you want to play with. The plant cards get placed face up in a column, all starting with the morning plants, and then the noon plants, and then the night plants. This comes in handy later on when you're trying to figure out which plant's ability triggers first. Everybody gets their own sprites in their own color. All of the tiles of the plants that you're going to be playing with get placed inside of the bag to be drawn during your turn. You'll also be needing some gems for this game, as some of the plants trigger these, and these are victory points at the end. And of course you get your wizard pawn. This is what you're going to be using to be placing them on the tiles that you played, just as a marker. Every turn you're going to be placing one patch. A patch is just a single tile, but a field is all of the same patches together in a group. When placing your tile down, you're going to be placing the wizard and one of your colored sprites on top of it. Now you have the choice to whether sprout or grow. Sprouting is on one side of the plant card, while grow is on the other side. Now a neat little thing with this game is that it actually comes with a training mode. And training mode is basically covering up the grow effect so that you don't have 10 to remember, you only then have 5. If you choose to sprout, it'll activate only the sprout power of the wizard's patch, the patch that you added. Whereas if you choose to grow, you will activate the grow power of every patch that the wizard's patch is touching. And this is where you have to activate them one at a time, going in the order of the plant cards. Once you've placed your patch, then you get to draw a new patch from the bag. Then you pass the wizard to the next player. When the last patch is drawn from the bag, the player drawing it must announce it, and then each player gets one more turn before scoring. Any gems that you have gained during the turn count as the points, and some plants have end-game scorings that you can count up. And then you get to score each field. Fields are worth points based on their size. So if you have 1 patch size, it's 1 point. And if you have 2 patch fields, that's 3 points, and 3 patch fields is 5 points, and so on, all the way up to 8 patches. The person who ends up with the most amount of gems at the end of the game is the person who has won. So the first thing that I noticed whenever I received this game is how colorful the box is. And as soon as I opened up the box, I realized that they brought that inside as well, because all of these tiles are amazing. Now we play with this black mat here on our game table, and I love any game that has bright colors because it really makes it pop. So I really enjoyed that that's the way that they went, because I feel like plants are pretty green, they can get a little dark, so I'm happy that they went that route instead. Now I know meeples don't really have anything to do with whether the game plays well or not, but I will say I have perused the Kickstarter page, and I think their meeples that they chose with the wings on them and the wizard too is pretty cool, and it'll just add to the game, so it gives it a little bit more of a visual effect for it. So as well as the tiles looking really good, they have some awesome abilities too. One that I really enjoyed is Wing Bean. Wing Bean I think is my favorite tile. It allows you to move 1 unlocked patch. So any tile that's around that you can easily just drag off of the board, and you can move that to another spot. Now the meeples that were on that tile gets taken off. and then you gain as many gems as sprites that you took off of that tile. So that tile is a double whammy. You can kind of move the tiles around so that your opponent isn't scoring, say, a 4th tile in their patch anymore. They're only going to be scoring a 3rd tile, as well as getting their sprites back. So now they're not going to be able to disperse those throughout all of the other tiles to try to claim those ones. And not only is that happening, but you're also getting gems for it, which are victory points for the end of the game. So I think Sprout for this one is my go-to for this specific tile. A lot of the grow ones are really good too. Obviously, if you're placing your wizard down in a spot that has one of these wing beans next to it, then yeah, obviously I'm gonna wanna trigger that one. And like I was saying earlier, they have a training mode for this one too. So this one, you're only using the Sprout power whenever you're playing that way, and you're just going to go ahead and cover up the grow option from all of these 5 tiles, or these 5 plant cards. It just makes it a little bit easier to remember what they do, especially if you're playing with children. I did get to play this one with my kids, and covering those extra options up really helps since neither of my kids read, and they can just visualize and see which tile, and they just kind of know which tile, which color it is, and what the benefit is that they do whenever they place it down. So playing this way really helped, and they tell you which plants to actually play with, which 5 plants to play with, because they all give you sprites at the beginning whenever you're placing your wizard, because there are 2 plants in here so far, in this copy anyway, that I have received, that don't give you sprites at the beginning, but they have a pretty good benefit whenever you're planting it, or whenever you're sprouting it or planting it. So not much lost that way, even though you're not gaining that sprite at the beginning. But with the training mode, they're all the ones that'll either give you lots of sprites to play with, or it'll give you lots of gems. So it's probably going to be a little bit higher of a scoring game whenever you're playing this way. I have played with all of the tiles. I've played a few games now where I've gotten every single tile out. Like I said, Wing Bean was my favorite. I don't have a least favorite. I think as long as you can get some tiles that kind of feed off of each other, like if you can get a tile that allows you to place 3 sprites on the board, on your tile, and then you can place another tile down that's going to allow you to disperse those, then you can just kind of take over the board, all of the tiles, all the patches and the fields that are on the board, and you can kind of take them over. Or even just moving yours over so that your opponent's sprite gets taken off. So they made it to be able to play with kids, but they also added extra things to it. I think that you can play with adults. It's a lighter game. It's an easy game to understand, figuring out all of the plant abilities, all different plants. You're only playing with 5 plants, so you get to know the abilities for them. And then you have to figure out whether you're going to sprout or grow your plant. So there's some decisions. You only have 2 tiles in your hand. So you're always thinking about which one I'm going to place, how am I going to do it, and try to figure out the best way to gain as many gems as you can, because those are the victory points, or even just taking over the tiles, because the more that you have, the more points that you're going to have at the end too. There is also another tile in here too, and that's the Emberwood tile. This one's pretty neat as well, because this one allows you to capture one of your opponent's sprites. So there is an ability that you have to resolve after, whenever the game has ended, and however many sprites that you have captured from an opponent, they have to pay you 1 gem to release them. So this is a good way too to get more gems, more points for yourself, but also take away points from your opponent. I'm looking forward to my husband coming back home so that I can get a 3-player game in as this. So I was able to just play this at a 2-player game with my brother-in-law. We got a few games in of this, and I found at 2 players, just because of the type of people that we are, we're not very aggressive players. So we kind of basically just left people alone. Like I left him alone, he left me alone, and we went on our merry way. And I found that the scores were very even. He won a couple, I won a couple. So it was pretty 50-50 on who won. And that's just because we're leaving each other alone. We're playing the tiles that we have and just kind of worrying about ourselves. So I'll be interested in playing with a 3-player. One, because there's going to be more people putting tiles down. There's probably going to be smaller patches or smaller fields too, since there's gonna be 3 people working instead of 2 people. And then of course Nick is a little bit more of an aggressive player, so he would try to stop somebody if they're getting a little bit too out of hand with how many tiles that they have and things like that. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out. But 2 players, like, still fun, and the scores were really even. We were only between 2 and 4 points away every single game that we ended. So I'm sure this would probably be a really fun game at a higher player count too. 3, 4 players. I think that at 5 players, I haven't played it, so I have no idea. But because some of the tiles that you're playing allow you to put 5 gems on a specific tile that you're playing, or 2 gems on the tile that you're playing. So I think even at 2 players, if you get those slants out on the board, it becomes a little bit messy. It's very crowded. So I could just imagine at 5 players, if you get those exact same plant cards out too, and everything on the board is going to have gems on it. So make sure not to knock any of those off. But the game does come with 5, 10, 2, and 1 gem options, which is great. And those, for me anyway, need to be used a little bit more because I think we had 8 single gem tokens on 1 tile. So I love that you can play with children or you can play with adults, and it is an easy game. It's a simple game to understand, but loads of abilities on these plants, and trying to maximize the points that you can get every single time that you're playing your plant and strategically placing it so that you can kind of either mess with an opponent or just maximize how many sprites you're putting down and getting gems, and just loads of thinking because there are so many different tiles. Try to combine with other tiles to definitely maximize. You want to maximize these tiles on here to get the most amount of gems at the end. And this is a pretty quick game. The box says about 30 minutes, and I'm pretty sure I got all my games in within about 30 minutes as well, just at a 2-player. If not even like 20 minutes, because as soon as those tiles run out in the bag, that is it. You have 1 more turn, and then you're calculating the points. Now, with all that being said, there's a little bit of a setup here. Now, I know that all the tiles are in the bag, and you're just placing the tiles as you play. Now, there are numbers on these tiles, so you have to go through them based on how many players are playing the game and removing some of them, and then you have to go searching for the highest number that's left, and that is what's going on the board for setup. So you'll have 5 of the highest number, and I think for 2 players it would be a 6. So you have to go rifling through all of them, and then of course you can either choose which 5 plants that you want to play with, or you can just randomly choose which ones that you want. So you're going to be going through all of the tiles and picking out the ones that you're actually playing with the game, and then removing the rest and putting them to the side. Then going through it, picking out the highest number, and then placing all of those tiles back in the bag. So just a little bit of a setup just from those tiles and figuring out which ones are actually going to be in gameplay. Now, of course, if you're playing at a 5-player count, then all you have to do is search for the highest number because all the tiles are going to be in play then. So those are my first impressions of the game. I actually backed this game before even receiving this copy to play it, and now since playing it, I'm going to keep the pledge for their Kickstarter campaign because I actually did have a lot of fun playing this game, and I'm looking forward to all those extras from the Kickstarter campaign that I'm going to be able to play with once it's completed. So again, I just want to say thank you very much for supplying this copy for me to give it a try, and I'm hoping that this video helped you make up your mind about the game as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.